I have someone I want to marry.
That's what my son told me one day. He was 30 years old. He'd been dating a woman for a while, but he hadn't yet introduced me to her. I was concerned that he might not be thinking about marriage just yet, but I didn't think that was appropriate for us to discuss as parents. Despite this, I was frustrated because I knew he was of marriageable age, so I was honestly happy when he told me. I'm glad to hear that. What's she like?
She's bright, hardworking, and nice. But she's 3 years older than me.
Really? In today's world, finding an older wife is not rare. Were you concerned about that?
No, but I was just wondering what you would say.
I don't care about such a thing.
There's one more thing I have to tell you.
What is it?
She has a child.
What?
Her ex-husband died in an accident when she was pregnant.
A child? Does that mean you will be the father of the child?
Well, it's obvious since I'm getting married to her. He's a very good kid.
I'm against it.
Mom, I know that it won't be easy.
You don't know anything. I'm absolutely against it. Raising someone else's child is not a simple thing.
I know that it won't be easy.
You don't know anything. I'm absolutely against it. Saying that, I got up from my seat and left him. I'm Iris Miller, 58 years old. My father died of illness when I was 5 years old, and my mother remarried 2 years later. My new father used to adore me. When my younger brother was born the following year, he lost interest in me. I think my mother was concerned about my stepfather. In front of my brother and stepfather, she stopped caring about me. When my brother turned 2 years old, my mother died suddenly and I was left all alone. Because I wasn't legally adopted by my stepfather, I was a stranger to him. My stepfather refused to take me in, so I had to go to an orphanage. I had always assumed that an orphanage was a facility for children who had lost their parents. However, I discovered that several people had temporarily stayed there for various reasons. I was 10 years old at the time, so I was past the point where people would readily welcome me as an adopted child. Nonetheless, I was sent to people's homes on trial a few times. I tried everything I could to make them like me, but they still preferred a younger child. Or they declared they couldn't accept me after only a few days of living together. For various reasons, I never had new parents. I eventually stopped fantasizing about a stranger adopting an unrelated child like me. I discovered how difficult it is the hard way. I envied the children whose parents came to see them on occasion, bringing trendy comic books and candy. My parents did not come to see me because both of my parents had died. I heard Claire's mother was still alive, but she never came to see Claire. It's natural that your parents can't come to see you because they are dead. It's better that way since you don't have to expect anything. That's what Claire said. I thought she had a point when she said that. If my parents were still alive, I'd be curious as to why they didn't come to see me. I'm sure I would have felt lonelier. Don't you miss your parents, Claire? I'm fine. I don't miss them. Claire seemed a little sad when she said that. We were the same age, roomed together, and went to school together. We were very close. To compensate for our loneliness, we always spent time together. I didn't miss my parents as long as we were together. We remained up late conversing, and sometimes the school staff chastised us, but that was also fun. Claire used to say, "Don't worry, no matter what happened." In retrospect, I believe she was telling herself that. Those words were very reassuring to me at the time. Claire was very good at drawing. She drew the same image on a palm-sized stone and presented to me one day. It looked like a jewel to me. This is beautiful. I will treasure it. This is a sign of friendship. But after a while, in junior high school, Claire's mother came to pick her up and she was gone. Then I was alone again. I want to see Claire again. I used to think so, but I graduated from high school without ever seeing her. I didn't continue my education and instead acquired a job, so I had to leave the orphanage. I married my husband, who was a senior at my company, 10 years after I started working, and we had a son at the age of 28. I was so happy to have a family. My husband was very kind, and his parents were happy to accept me, even though I had no relatives. My husband's parents have already passed away. They were very kind people who cared for me all the way to the end. I've always wanted my son to grow up in a loving family. I am not saying that single-parent families are bad, but I wasn't sure whether my son realized how difficult it was to raise a child who wasn't his own. That's why I couldn't happily support his decision. If he couldn't love that child wholeheartedly, or if he ever had a child and his love became imbalanced, I knew better than anyone else that that child would suffer the most. I didn't want to see the child go through the same thing I did. I didn't want my son to treat the child that way, and I didn't want him to feel bad about it later.
Mom, would you meet her and her child once?
I don't want to. There is no point in seeing them.
Why not? She's the one I chose.
I don't care about how nice she is. I don't think you should marry someone who has a child.
That's prejudice.
No matter what you say, I'm absolutely against it.
Mom!
I'm not bragging, but my son is sweet. I knew he wouldn't marry someone over my objections. I didn't care if he'll resent me for it.
I understand your feelings, but you shouldn't oppose him so headstrongly. Listen to Jordan a little more. I'm sure he didn't make his decision without giving it some thought.
I know that, but raising an unrelated child is not that easy.
Jordan must have made his own decision to marry.
But I knew what Nathan, my husband, had said, and I knew Jordan had thought about it as well. But even after nearly 50 years, I had not forgotten the loneliness of that time. I remembered how my stepfather had changed after having his own child. I don't think he was a bad man. I am sure he was a kind man. He was so kind to my mother when she first married him. I was happy to have a father. But after my brother was born, I was always alone. My parents always talked about the baby. I was so lonely that I thought they had forgotten I even existed. After the baby was born, I tried to hold him once, but my stepfather said,
"Don't touch him!"
and he yelled at me. I had lost my position in that house even before my mother died. So to be honest, when my stepfather said he didn't want to take me in, I was a little relieved. I knew it would be difficult to live with my stepfather, who was nothing more than a stranger to me. I told my son I was raised in an orphanage, but I never told him my mother remarried. Nathan knew about it, so he understood my feelings in a way. If I hadn't met Claire at the orphanage, I would have been all alone. Claire. Sometimes I missed her. It has been 45 years since I had last seen her. Even if I passed her on the street, I wasn't sure I'd identify her. I took out the stone that I had kept in the back of the drawer of the cabinet. The colors had already peeled off, and what was left had faded away. Still, the emotion of thinking it was a gem at the moment has been etched into my mind. One day, Nathan was grinning at the screen on his phone. "What are you looking at? You look creepy."
"What do you mean creepy? I'm your husband."
"Your nose is growing. You are drooling."
Actually, I got a picture of Jordan's girlfriend and her kids sent to me. She's quite pretty. You want to take a look?
"No thanks."
Come on.
I said, "No thanks." I headed to the kitchen to get away from the place. But when my husband was taking a bath, I saw his phone left on the table. I couldn't help but pick it up. He didn't lock it, so I could look at it all I wanted. I opened the screen and scrolled through the stored photos. I quickly found the photo I was looking for. It was a picture of a woman with a boy. She was indeed a pretty person, and the boy had a bright smile on his face. I could almost imagine what kind of mother this woman was. I sighed, wondering what I should do. Then, my gaze was drawn to something behind the woman in the photograph. No way. I immediately called my son. I need to ask you some questions. Can you come over tonight? That night, I was in my son's car with that stone in my palm. The woman who opened the door looked a little nervous. I greeted her and looked around the room. I saw the photo that was in that picture and the stone in front of it. I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind if I come in. I followed her into the living room and sat down in front of the picture. A nostalgic face and the photograph come together. She's Claire, right? Huh? How did you know my mother's name? We were best friends, Claire and I. We spent a lot of time together at the orphanage. I didn't know that. My mother used to tell me about her friend. She told me about a good friend of hers, Iris. I think that was her name. I'm Iris. I smiled at her surprised expression. So you are Claire's... Yes, I'm Lucy, her daughter. I see. What a coincidence. I never thought my son would ask to marry Claire's daughter. When did Claire pass away? She died 2 years ago due to illness. I see. I can't believe that you were my mother's best friend. My mother always wanted to see you until the very end. I've always wanted to meet her too. The stone. I see she kept it with her all these years. I have it too, here. Saying that, I opened my palm and showed her the stone on it. Oh. The colors used to be more vivid. Back then, we couldn't take pictures like now, so there aren't any. But when I close my eyes, it still comes back to me so clearly. My mother used to say that too. She could have repainted it, but she said that if she did that, your and her stones would not have matching images. Claire. I couldn't help but cry. I couldn't believe that we met again like this. Claire was eventually taken in by her own mother, but she was a toxic mom. Claire was forced to help her mother, who worked at a nightclub. There was no way a junior high school girl could work at a snack bar. When the cops arrived, her mother would say that her daughter was only visiting. She also made Claire assist in serving drinks to the guys. Adult entertainment restrictions were not as strict as they are now at the time. The police didn't go too far if they were told it was her daughter. When she refused, her mother became furious, raising her hand and wouldn't give her any food. Claire left home after graduating from high school because she didn't want to live like that. She came to see me once, but I had already left the facility. She could have found out if she had asked the director of the orphanage, but she couldn't ask because she thought he might contact her mother. Claire then moved from one part-time job to another. She married a man she met when she was 22 years old. However, he cheated on her while she was pregnant and they divorced. After that, she raised her daughter Lucy by herself. Claire must have worked hard. I could see Claire's smile in my mind's eye, who was always trying her hardest and never showed any signs of weakness. I told Jordan about my mother's remarriage. Jordan and Lucy listened in silence.
I didn't know about that.
It's not that I resent my mother or the man she remarried. I know it was only natural. But the lonely feeling I had at that time still remains in my heart.
You thought about Caleb, didn't you?
That's not all. After all, I'm a mother too, so I think about my own son first. I don't want Jordan to live his life feeling bad about what he did. I understand.
Mom, I understand how you feel, but I won't let Caleb feel lonely.
It's easy to say that, but people's feelings change.
I'm your son. That man and I are two different people. I wish you would have more faith in your own son.
I know, but... It's okay. I'm sorry to say this, but if something like that happens, I will protect my own son first, not Jordan. Lucy laughed. Her face was just like Claire's. I thought I heard Claire's voice in my ear saying, "It's okay." 3 months later. Today is my son's wedding. I cannot guarantee that there will be no challenges ahead, but every life has its difficulties. Caleb, my grandson, is now 6 years old. He's a really sweet boy, very obedient. When he smiles, he looks just like Claire. He calls me Grandma. My husband often squints at him when he addresses him as Grandpa. He is already adoring Caleb too much. I believe that Claire has entrusted these children to me. So no matter what happens in the future, I want to watch over them. But there is one thing that I have in my heart. My younger brother, who was separated from me when he was 2 years old. Even though we have different fathers, we are still siblings born from the same mother. I wonder if we will be able to meet one day. He may not even remember me. He may not even know that he has a sister. That's why I don't dare to look for him. If fate draws us together, I think that one day we may be able to meet, just as Claire and I were able to reunite.
My name is Lucas. Clover is the name of my wife, whom I married about a year ago. Clover and I were classmates in middle school, but we had little contact at that time. We met again when we were 20, became friends, and then began dating. Clover is quiet and gentle, but she is not a talker. I am a talker, so she always smiles and listens to me. My time with Clover is very warm and peaceful. It was only natural for us to consider our future together. In our 4th year of dating, at the age of 24, we got married. We lived a happy life after we married and celebrated our first wedding anniversary. I am a regular office worker, and Clover is a nurse. After work on Friday night, we met up at the restaurant where I proposed. "Sorry I'm running late because I changed my clothes in the department store's bathroom." Clover arrived 10 minutes after our meeting time, dressed in a beige one-piece dress. She always dresses casually to work, so she had to change after leaving the office. "It's alright, should we go in?" Of course, I like Clover the way she is in everyday life. It's been a while since I've seen her outside the house, and seeing her all dressed up makes me nervous but excited. And the food and the drinks are still as tasty as they were a year ago. Spending time with her and chatting with her is more enjoyable than usual for me. I am overjoyed that we can celebrate our first anniversary in this manner. As a token of my happiness, I gave her a small bouquet. It was a bouquet full of roses, Clover's favorite flower. I am not usually a romantic person, but I decided to try to follow the advice of a celebrity couple who had mentioned bouquets on anniversaries as a secret to their happiness. I was nervous, but I'm glad I saw Clover's happy face. "I'm looking forward to spending more time with you." We laughed and said this to each other, and the anniversary dinner was over. I was filled with a very happy feeling, and with Clover. I knew I'd be able to overcome it, even if our family grew or we faced a difficult situation. But, as if to put us to the test, the big obstacle arrived sooner than expected. It was about a month after our first wedding anniversary. I work in sales, and at about 3 p.m., I finished our last business meeting. I called my boss, and he said I could go home directly. Clover was also off today, so I was happy to be able to leave early and drove quickly. During a red signal light on the way, I considered sending a message to Clover, but my silly spirit of wanting to surprise her by showing up unexpectedly took over, so I didn't text her. I bought Clover's favorite cream puffs for both of us at a convenience store, and then, about 10 minutes from home, I came to an intersection. Right next to the traffic light where I had stopped, I noticed a familiar face. It was Clover. Since it was her day off, I wondered if she was out eating with friends. I thought so, but as I looked at her, surprisingly, there was a man her age standing beside her, happily holding her hand. What I was seeing was unbelievable. I rubbed my eyes and looked again and again, but it was clearly Clover's face. I was confused, but the light on the vehicle side was green. I couldn't stop because the car behind me was beeping. I had to accelerate the car and concentrate on the road, telling myself that Clover would never have an affair. But I was certain Clover was walking with another man. I parked my car in the parking lot of a large neighborhood parking and thought alone for a while, unable to make sense of the situation. But even after thinking about it, I couldn't get my thoughts straight, so I decided I'd just have to wait and see how Clover reacted. Finally, when I returned home after roughly the same time as usual, "You're home!" Clover greeted me with her usual smile. Yes, I'm home." It was anticlimactic because she was behaving so normally. I was curious whether she felt guilty or not. Or is she this way because she has nothing to feel guilty about? But they were holding hands, and there is no reason for an adult man and woman to hold hands unless it is for an indecent purpose. The more I observed Clover acting naturally, the more perplexed I became. "Harper's grandmother sent her a lot of asparagus today. She shared them with us, so we're having an asparagus party," Clover said happily as she went to the kitchen. Harper is Clover's best friend from middle school, and I was in the same club with her back then, so I'm familiar with her. "Oh, I see," I responded blankly, unable to focus on the conversation. "Oh, aren't you happy? I thought you liked asparagus, didn't you?" She looked at me curiously. "No, I'm happy. I should thank Harper," I responded quickly. I thought she'd been with that guy recently, but was she also with Harper? But there were certainly a lot of asparagus. Was I after all mistaken? Or had she carefully prepared them to deceive me? I felt bad for questioning Clover, who was smiling and preparing dinner. I think I still wanted to believe her. In the end, we finished dinner as usual and went about our day as usual. She was delighted with the cream puffs and was behaving normally. I left for work the next day. I texted Harper, who had given us the asparagus. "Did you meet Clover yesterday and gave her asparagus?" This question should not sound strange. Soon after, I received a reply. "That's correct. She was overjoyed because you like asparagus." That's what she said. After all, Clover was not lying. I don't believe Harper, who has a strong sense of justice, was complicit in Clover's affair. I tried not to think about it too much, convincing myself that I had been mistaken. Clover then resumed her normal behavior, and my normal, peaceful life returned. I eventually forgot to doubt Clover, but just when I thought my peaceful days were back, I witnessed something I should not have witnessed again. It was a beautiful day, so I decided to eat my lunch on a park bench on my way to make rounds. I visit this park on occasion, and I usually sit on the bench in front of the fountain. As I got closer, I noticed a couple sitting there, so I sat on the bench near the fountain, in the shade of a tree. I was eating the lunch Clover had made for me. It would be fun to eat lunch like this in the park with Clover. I was considering this when I noticed a couple sitting on a bench in front of the fountain. I saw something I couldn't believe. "Clover?" I couldn't stop muttering it out loud because it was so shocking. Yes, Clover was sitting there in a friendly manner with a man I didn't recognize. She was smiling at the stranger with the same happy smile I see on her face all the time. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was no way I could have misidentified Clover. Or rather, it was Clover, and there was no way I could have misidentified her. While my mind wandered, the two of them stood up and walked away hand in hand. Is she so obsessed with that guy that she didn't notice I was right there? If she had changed her mind, she should have told me straight away, but she was trying to be nice to both of us. My heart was filled with sadness and an unforgiving feeling. Later, I completed my work and returned home at the usual time. Clover, who appeared to have just returned home, was there. "There you are. I just got home too, so I'll hurry up and make dinner," she said. How could she act so normal? Could it be that she has been deceiving me for a long time and is accustomed to lying? "Where have you been?" I asked. "What? I went to work." Clover is a nurse at a clinic, and she's always at work on weekdays. I know that, but she was walking in the park with a guy during the day. I knew Clover wasn't going to tell me the truth. Clover is trying to deceive me to no end. Her dishonesty compelled me to take action in this matter. "You don't have to lie anymore," I told her so. Clover didn't seem to understand what I was saying. "What? What are you talking about?" she replied. I couldn't stand such a stupid act. I handed to her something I had prepared and told her, "I can't believe you anymore. Get out of here." The divorce papers were in my hands. "What? Why? What do you mean you can't believe me?" Clover appeared to be about to cry and was confused. It's incredible how tears flow when she's not even sad. That was what came to mind, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. "You should think about it carefully. I'm not returning home today." With that, I left the house. We had recently celebrated our first wedding anniversary, and I was looking forward to the future. I had no idea the future would be like this. With such despair in my heart, I checked into a nearby budget hotel that day. The next day, I went straight to work. During that time, I didn't hear from Clover, but I did receive a message about the time I finished work. I thought about it, but I couldn't find anything in my mind that made you so angry. But I am sorry that I intentionally made you feel bad. I want to be with you and will make an effort to do so. So I want to talk to you again face to face. I'd like to hear from you at any time. I sincerely apologize. Clover's words were very Clover-like, expressing her genuine feelings. If it weren't for the fact that she was having an affair, I can't believe she's still deceiving me after all that. I couldn't understand at all what she was trying to do. She should have left me if she loved that man so much that she smiled so brightly. However, we are supposed to be a couple who discusses everything, so continuing to run away from the situation without discussing it is probably not a good idea. Now that I calmed down a little, I'll come to believe that Clover might be able to be honest with me if I tell her everything I saw and felt. But I don't think I can live the same way I used to because she had an affair. That's what I thought. "Okay, I'll go home tomorrow," I responded. Then I received a message from Clover. "I appreciate it." I stayed at the budget hotel I had booked for that day. I was nervous at work the next day because I had a meeting with Clover after work. I also had a business meeting near the park where I had stopped the other day, so I went there as is my custom. When I arrived, I realized I should not have stopped here because it reminded me of something unpleasant. But because I had already parked my car, I decided to eat quickly and head home, so I went to my usual bench. I approached my usual bench, carrying the bag from the convenience store where I had purchased my lunch. To my surprise, a couple was sitting there again. My heart skipped a beat, and I thought my breathing would come to a halt. Suppressing my racing heart, I walked in front of the couple and sat on the bench where I had sat the day before. I looked at the woman's face, terrified, and saw it was Clover. My mind went blank. When I told her I was going to divorce her, she burst into tears and looked as if she couldn't believe it. I ran away from home, but she apologized and said we'll talk about it today. In the midst of all of this, she's having another affair with a smile on her face. I have no idea what Clover was thinking. Sadness, anger, and other emotions surfaced, but I couldn't grasp the significance of her actions. I might have even felt a kind of fear. Then, today, the guy left first, leaving Clover alone on the bench. I couldn't take it any longer, so I stood up and walked over to Clover. Then I grabbed her arm. "What the hell do you think you were doing?" I said. "Huh? Excuse me?" Clover said. "Is she making fun of me by treating me like a stranger and giving me a suspicious look?" I didn't understand what she meant. "What do you mean, excuse me?" But when I said that, I noticed something strange. Somehow, I felt like I really didn't know her. It was definitely Clover in front of me, but something felt different. "Aren't you Clover?" When I said that, she looked a little surprised and then said, "No, I'm not," she replied. That could be taken as a poor lie by Clover to get out of this situation. But what made her words more true was the fact that she resembled Clover in appearance, but the atmosphere around her was not at all like Clover's. When I looked closely, I noticed a mole under her eye and on her chin that wasn't Clover's. "Oh, I'm sorry." Was she the person I'd seen recently and mistook for Clover? Or was it just for today? My mind was racing, but I had indeed misidentified her. And to grab the arm of a stranger and speak to her in a commanding tone, she might as well call the police. "I mistook you for another person. I sincerely apologize." She made a surprising remark to me as I bowed deeply. Do you perhaps know someone who looks a lot like me?" I looked up as soon as I heard those words. "Huh? Ah, yes! My wife has a similar face to yours, which is why I mistook you for her." When I said that, she told me a surprising story. According to her, her name is Luna. She is the same age as Clover and I, and she works in an office near this park. Luna has a fiancé, the man she was with earlier. He works at a nearby office, so they often meet like this during their lunch break. The person I saw the other day at this park was Luna too. She also said that, based on the circumstances, I had seen her at an intersection a few months before. After hearing all of this, I was feeling a terrible sense of regret. I mistook a stranger who looked exactly like her for my wife Clover, and I assumed she was having an affair without even listening to her, and told her one-sidedly about the divorce. I was the one who owed Clover an apology, but I knew how difficult it would be to mend her broken heart. What have I done? I was so upset with myself that I forgot Luna was still there and mumbled that with my head in my hands. Then, there is one more thing I haven't told you, Luna said. What is it? I asked her with my mind at a loss. I have a twin sister who was separated from me, Luna said. What? I was surprised again and asked her what she meant. I was born as a twin, but my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and since then, I hardly remember it. We never saw each other again after my parents' divorce due to a complicated relationship. We were forbidden to see each other as their daughters, and I've lived this long without even knowing if my sister is still alive. But I've never forgotten about my sister. I want to see Clover again. That is how I have lived my life. Luna was crying as she said this, so I assumed she was telling the truth. Does that mean that my wife, Clover, is Luna's sister? But I had never heard from Clover that she was a twin. So if your wife is my sister Clover, it's no surprise that you made a mistake. We were strikingly similar. Hearing those words, I felt just a little bit lighter. However, the fact that they were twins did not change the fact that I had harmed Clover by jumping to conclusions. It was almost time for both of us to return to work while we were talking. We exchanged contact information and parted ways that day. I'm not sure if Clover will forgive me, but I decided to apologize to her first. Then, we'll talk about Luna. So I returned home. When I got home, I found Clover with an anxious look on her face. My heart tightened when I saw her expression, and I immediately apologized. Clover, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I suddenly bowed deeply, and Clover looked surprised. Then I told her that I had suspected she was having an affair and that I had met Luna without concealing anything. Clover looked puzzled when she heard everything, but then she opened her mouth. Thank you for telling me. There is no need for you to apologize, Lucas. It was my fault for not informing you that I had a twin sister who had been separated from me. I'm really sorry for confusing you. What? No, you don't have to apologize. It's my fault for being so hasty. I'm really sorry. We apologized to each other for a while before we could finally communicate. And for the first time in a long time, we were able to laugh from the bottom of our hearts with each other. After that, I heard Clover discussing her past. It was the same story Luna had told me, and they turned out to be twin sisters. Clover wasn't trying to keep it from me on purpose. It was because her mother told her, "You should forget about your twin sister," and raised her in this manner. I know because I've met Clover's mother, and she is a very nice person. To be honest, it's difficult to imagine my mother-in-law saying such things to Clover as if it were something from her past she wished to forget. But it may be that their relationship was that complicated. But, like Luna, Clover had never forgotten her twin sister. She expressed her desire to see her, and shed tears as she spoke of it. Seeing her like that, I couldn't leave her alone. I proposed that we both inform my mother-in-law and that Clover and Luna meet again. Clover was unsure at first, but seemed determined to be honest with herself. We went to see Luna again after getting my mother-in-law's approval. Clover and I went to the park. We arrived much earlier than the appointed time, but Luna also came to the appointed place 10 minutes before. They really are twins. That's what I thought when I saw the two of them together for the first time. As soon as they were reunited, they hugged. "Thank goodness, you look well," Luna said. "You too, Luna. I've missed you for a long time." With that, Clover started crying first, and then, almost at the same time, Luna started crying too. I concluded that they were, in fact, twins. They were entirely absorbed in twins' world, chatting happily. I was completely cut off from the conversation, but I was really happy to see Clover's smile. I would not have sat on this bench with such a peaceful feeling if I hadn't met Luna. Thinking about that, I was truly happy to see the two of them looking so happy. Since then, Clover and Luna have been meeting frequently. A few months later, we were invited to Luna's wedding. Clover was overcome with joy as she witnessed her twin sister's special day. A year later, Clover and I had a child. Luna frequently visits us and cries with delight. Because I am not a twin, I can only imagine how close they are. But when I look at them, they share their joy with me. It was not a happy time for me or Clover when I suspected infidelity. But if it was a barrier that we had to overcome in order to be happy in this way, then I can say that the previous incident was worthwhile.